Over the last 10 months, I've been able to get 32 people to the peak transformation end result, and I've realized that there are 10 main habits that you want to follow in order to reach 10% body fat. So, really, what I'm just explaining is these are the main common traits I've seen in the clients that actually achieved and reached the end transformation. We've done it 32 times, so we've trialed and tested it enough, and I'm going to report back to you those 10 habits that will allow you to have the greatest success for you getting to 10% body fat. So, without further ado, let's roll straight into the video. Now, the very first thing I want you to do in order to get to 10% body fat is to weigh yourself daily. This means when you wake up in the morning, use the bathroom, and then weigh in. Why do I want you to do that daily? Well, it is just the accountability piece of being able to stand on the scale. It's the equivalent of looking yourself in the mirror and knowing, did you eat everything you should have? Did you overeat? Did you hit your steps? Did you do your cardio? Or were you a humanoid piece of shit where you said you were going to do something and yet again, you did not follow through and do it? It is a beautiful way of keeping yourself accountable with that, with numbers that just don't lie. So I want you to weigh yourself in every day and track that. Ultimately, that's going to allow you to drive decisions moving forward as well. But ultimately, it's the accountability piece why we mention it. The next thing I want you to do is more of a tactical move. I want you to fast during the mornings. And your mornings will look like a litre of water, but first, then coffee 45 minutes in, and then you've got to have pushed your first meals back well into the day. And the reason for this is not that intermittent fasting helps you lose weight, it's just you've limited the window that you could possibly eat in, therefore limiting the opportunity you have to just eat more. You could definitely overeat your deficit by eating in any amount of hours in the day, but the sheer fact of pushing it back will just make it a little bit smoother and a little bit easier in order to stay within that deficit. The next, again, is another tactical move. You're going to do cardio up before food down. So keep food as high as you can for as long as you can, because you want to restore and retain muscle. You want to keep the muscles as full as you can for as long as you can. So therefore, it makes sense to drive the deficit more through cardio than it does from taking from food. Just taking from food will ultimately get you to the point you are quite small and flat. And ultimately, that is definitely one of the factors that will stop you continuing forward and actually getting to where you need to. I want you eating whole foods. And I don't want your diet to be so nice and palatable. You can see all these reels on Instagram where people are making Oreo protein ice cream. You're not going to do that. You're not going to be that guy, because it's not about the fucking Oreo ice cream. It's about the fact that you still wanted cake and ice cream, even though you know that's not the type of person that has abs, eats that style of food. That's why it's a problem. If it fits your macros, it kind of works, but like, it's the fact that you're still the guy that wanted cake and ice cream rather than the guy that should have been eating whole proper foods. Whole foods ultimately are going to be more filling. You want fibre in your diet, that's going to come from oats, berries and veg, and it'll pack it out. You want proper proteins in your diet, it's going to come from your main lean protein sources, chicken, tuna, whitefish, obviously protein powder, you can use that as well. And your carb sources coming from either white potato, sweet potato, rice or pasta. Whole foods only when you're on a dieting phase. Pack out that meal plan as much as you possibly can and just enjoy eating human food again for the first time in a while. The next thing I'll say is you need to actually respect yourself. The reason most people are out of shape is because they simply just don't respect themselves. They will happily abuse their own body just so their brain can take a nice hit. They'll bite off their nose to spite their face. Just have a little bit of respect for yourself. Give yourself the amount of water you need. Give yourself the amount of sleep you need. Move your body. Get some sunlight, for goodness sake. And actually just look after yourself for once in your life. If you had that mindset, if you looked at yourself from a second person and treat him with the utmost respect like you probably do to someone you look up to, I guarantee you would not be eating half the things you're doing. I guarantee you would not be acting half the way you lot are acting. So honestly, this sounds kind of throwaway comment and more like mindset than tactics, but if you respect yourself, you will get the result. And if you don't, you won't. And guess what? No one else will either. Another tactic I want you to do is to plan tomorrow the night before. Because ultimately, you're going to be told 10,000 steps a day, 20 minutes of cardio, eat like this, make sure they're prepped, train at this time. Oh, and you've got all your normal obligations on top of that. If you don't plan that out with a time for each thing to do at each point of the day, you won't do it. You'll miss something, and that's obvious because there's a lot. This will feel like a second job if you've not already allocated time to go and get it done. And you must understand that if you're not already 10% body fat, you're not that guy yet. So you can't just turn it on off the cuff like half these people can, because it's just not who you are. Your brain will it'll put up a barrier. It'll feel like you're swimming upstream when you try to act in this way. So if you physically write it out on a schedule for you to follow, it then becomes black and white. It then becomes you're either a bitch and you didn't do it, or you're not and you did it. And ultimately, that's the question you want to come down. You want to channel yourself into the yes/no options so you can move forward. Now, to do this, you're going to need 8 hours sleep. If you don't get 8 hours sleep, ultimately your ability to drop off body fat is going to suffer because your hormone signals of leptin and ghrelin are going to be through the roof. So, like, you're just generally going to be sat there ravenous. Your ability to recover from the sessions and grow tissue is going to be impeded, and your ability to keep your cortisol down and stress levels down is going to be impeded, therefore easier to retain body fat rather than drop it off. When it comes to training, and this is the 8th tip, I want you to train hard, but I don't want you to train long. You've only got a certain amount of glycogen, a certain amount of fuel and carbohydrates. Use them wisely. Do not do, if the barrier is here to retain the tissue or even build new tissue, do not be doing a lot down here, which is what people do when they do 4 sets of 8 to 12. No. Sharpen the blade, put it into 2 sets. 1 set, 6 to 10. Lift as much as you possibly can. Breach through the barrier to retain or build tissue. And then do 1 back off set that manages the fatigue and hit 12 to 15. Do that across all lifts and you'll retain and build tissue. If you try and burn through a lot of fuel, you're going to be like, oh, dieting's so hard, I've got no energy. You got no energy because you're trying to do a shit ton of volume when you just don't have the capacity to do that. Volume is a beautiful thing, but it's good for when you're in a gaining phase rather than in a dieting phase. So make your sets count. The next thing I will say is say no more than you say yes. And this is going to be uncomfortable. People will test you and be like, oh, why are you not coming out? Well, because I'm dieting. Oh, but you can just, no, I can't. Say no more than you say yes. Because if you're serious about this, this will be important to you. If you're serious about becoming this individual that's 10% body fat, you're going to need to get used to saying no and letting people down and being selfish anyway. I think we can understand that being slightly selfish in a weird way is the best thing you could do for you and them, because you can only help people once you've helped yourself. But if you don't say no to people, you'll never have the time and the capacity to help yourself. So you're going to have to say no to meals out, you're going to have to say no to drinks out, you're going to have to say no to things where it's going to pull you away and off the plan. But it's not forever, boys. It shouldn't take you forever to get to 10% body fat. This is a short-term sacrifice, and that's what makes the whole thing worthwhile and beautiful in the first place. The last thing I will say is, don't change the fucking plan. If you have set the goal to get to 10% body fat, put your blinkers on, turn your brain off, and just send it until you get to the goal. Most of you will get to 13% body fat and sack it. Because it got too hard, you started running out of too much steam, you felt flat, therefore skinny, and you think you've lost tissue, and then you want to go straight into a building phase, and you never achieved the 10% body fat when you were close. And that's because most of you will see on Instagram, in your gym, other people that look thicker and bigger than you, lifting a load more tin, you're like, I need to go and bulk again. Well, guess what? I guarantee you, when you've spent a couple of months bulking, you're like, I need to get back down to lean again. And you're constantly in this cycle of going from like bulk cut, and you never really make any progress. You're never as lean as you wanted to be, you never accumulate the amount of tissue you wanted to be. Your ability to stick to one thing and focus is absolutely everything in this game. Your ability to diet when you need to diet and get to 10% body fat, and your ability to get after it and shift as much tin as possible to get as much tissue as possible in the gaining phase is also very, very important. Most people can't do that because we're in a dopaminergic fucking pandemic where everyone is hungry for dopamine and change and new shiny objects. If you can be the guy that can stick to one thing over the long term, you will win in the end. Trust me when I say that. So they are the 10 habits that I want you to follow to get to 10% body fat. We've delivered this video in 10 minutes. If you found it useful, subscribe. If you want to work with me and you want me to do it for you, then ultimately book a call and we'll take it from there. Thank you for watching.